we have to defend our systems, which is the main effort, if you ask me, in any military operation, in any military budget. If there is a, let's say, assume that the cyber budget is 100%, I would invest in defense, in the defense, some 70%, about 20% for intelligence gathering and 10% for offensive activity. Because if you do not defend your systems, it can be very, very devastating to your activity. In Israel, I know, for sure, I know we have enemies like Iran, Syria, whatever is left of Syria, Hamas or whatever. But I know that there are rivals like China, Russia that may be active, and also friendly states may be active, collecting information, whatever, and also organizations and criminal organizations that are used by states to do actions in cyberspace. You know that China has groups that are, let's say, criminal groups that are active. They are directed and maybe funded by the government. The same in Russia, the same in Iran.
What do you think is the changing infrastructural basis of cyber attacks, and most importantly, non-kinetic attacks?
Alexander the Great. We tell them, okay, this is the situation, please do whatever you can. He will not be confused. He would have known what needs to be done. Since the beginning of mankind, the principle of war did not change.
Once you were talking about Alexander, it reminded me of an Indian poet, Shrikant Verma, who, while talking about Babur, said that a warrior Babur was looking for Samarkand and kept walking until he couldn't find Samarkand because he missed it halfway through and kept walking ahead. So I hope that we just do not keep walking ahead with technology and actually stop and look at what we have invented. Hello and welcome. You're watching the Geo Interviews. In the current landscape of international security, the borders and cyber conventional warfare has changed on a daily basis. The disruption and the projection of intelligence and gathering information has drastically changed overnight, and the critical infrastructures of threat have increased and, more importantly, have shifted from one place to the other. The multi-vectors of cyber threat are increasing on a daily basis, and our understanding of it is very limited. So that is why we are today very happy and honored to have with us Dr. Gabi Siboni, a researcher at the Misgavich Institute of National Security and Design and Strategy at Jerusalem Institute for Security and Strategy. Dr. Siboni, thank you so much for coming here. And most importantly, should I call you Colonel or Doctor?
You can call me Gabi.
Gabi, so that will be fine. So, sir, you have started your career from studying mechanical engineering, and now you are looking at cyber warfare and cyber defense. Now, looking at what cyber operations have become from earlier strategies of being small military projects that started off, and now a world wide web with increased artificial intelligence and technology. How do you think this redefining of architecture on national defense has shaped or is going in which direction in the 21st century?
Well, look, just to give an overview of my view, cyber warfare is another tool in the complex of warfare. Okay, if we're talking about the political side, because cyber activity has also a criminal side, not only a political side. When we and mind you, the criminal side is way in magnitude much larger and much more extensive than the political side. Only one reason, a small reason, because money is involved, and there is a lot of money you can do using cyber activity to steal money, to do ransomware, a variety of activities that you can make a lot of money through it. On the political side, on the other hand, we have, just for an overview, we have states that are active in cyberspace, both defensively, intelligence, and offensively, collecting intelligence. You have non-state actors. Normally, they will be supported by states, but they are also active. Rarely you can find a non-state actor which does not have any state supporting it, maybe ISIS or something like that, yes, Al-Qaeda. But these are the actors. Now, we see that this is another layer of activity. We have ground operation activity. We have aerial activity, maritime activity, and we have also cyber activity. And this is, we should look at it in this context. That's another layer of activity. You cannot decide wars only by cyber, not yet. I don't see it in the upcoming future and the foreseen horizon. I don't see it. It is a supportive tool. It is supportive in terms of, as I mentioned, of intelligence collection and offensive activity. However, the most, let's say, invested part of cyber activity in military operation is the defensive side, because you have to defend yourself properly against your rivals and enemies that will try to do whatever you try to do to them. And sometimes they have better ability, and you have to invest in your defense. Now, the new technologies that arouse, the AI, are of course shifting a lot of ability to states, both on the defensive side and on the offensive side, the intelligence gathering side. And we will see, as long as we go, that these kind of trends are going to be more and more active and are going to influence the way we conduct cyber operation. I just want to add another layer to the cyber operation. It is the influence operations. That is a subset of cyber operations. Influence operations are conducted, may be conducted directly on population of a state to influence whatever they think, and in the end, how they act. For example, during elections, or if you want to boost some, let's say, some polarized discourse in your target states. And also can be conducted directly on enemy forces, to as the same way you do some fires, artillery fires, before you go for an offensive. You can do some cyber artillery, which I mean influence operation artillery on your enemy. So when you are there, it is the ability of the enemy to act and to confront you is reduced. So this is an overview of what we see.
So focusing on that, you have done extensive work on cyber doctrine. So what I wanted to ask you was, now we have many non-state actors. Earlier there were institutions, agencies, espionage, and all those things during the time of the Cold War and the Iron Thaw. But now this is not limited to air, land, or sea. The warfare has extended and the deterrence have extended. So what are the frameworks and models that we can look at to understand the modern warfare? And most importantly, what are the new deterrents that we are not looking at?
First of all, you know that our conventional activities, they are all relying on computerized system. There is no, in modern warfare, you have to rely on computerized systems and computers and whatever you do, infantry, armored, aerial, maritime, whatever you do is heavily using computerized systems. That means that we are exposed to the enemy attacking those systems. And we first and foremost, we have to defend our systems, which is the main effort, if you ask me, in any military. in any military operation, in any military budget, if there is a, let's say, assume that the cyber budget is 100%, I would invest in defense, in the defense, some 70%, about 20% for intelligence gathering and 10% for offensive activity. Because if you do not defend your systems, it can be very, very devastating to your activity. So we have to understand that, and to make sure that our systems are well defended. It can be again from from enemy states, but also from rivals. I don't know about Russia, not Russia. I don't know about India, but for example, you have enemies. You are subject to their, of course, kinetic activity, but also non-kinetic like cyber activities. But there are other actors that might be active. And then when I mentioned Russia, you can assume that maybe Russia is active. I don't know against whom, for whom. I don't know the geopolitical side. China may be active. It doesn't matter that you have good relations with but for example, in Israel, I know for sure I know we have enemies like Iran, Syria, whatever is left of Syria, Hamas or whatever. But I know that there are rivals like China, Russia that may be active, and also friendly states may be active, collecting information, whatever, and also organizations and criminal organizations that are used by states to do actions in cyberspace. You know that China has groups that are, let's say, criminal groups that are active. They are directed and maybe funded by the government. The same in Russia, the same in Iran. I don't know about India. If you have criminal groups that are used by the government to conduct activities, and it is common practice. That's how it works. Normally, in a liberal democracy like India or like Israel, it is difficult to conduct this kind to use criminal organizations, but let's say China and Russia and Iran, that's no problem. They do it all the time. And this is also something to understand. And the linkage between cyber crime and cyber defense, or cyber, let's say political cyber, is there is an interface. For example, you know that North Korea has a group that specializes in stealing money using let's say the international SWIFT system for banks. And this is a group by the government, and they are doing criminal activity. Sometimes they steal money, and they steal money from legitimate actors. It can be commercial entities, and it can be governments. So you see that there is a linkage, there is an interface between cybercrime and the political side of cyber. And the same, it happens also in the kinetic world, that sometimes a criminal would be hired to do some activities that has political, let's say, interface or influence. So this is, in a whole, this is, you can see those, as I mentioned. And now if you put on that the technological development, let's say quantum computing, AI, you are, the problem has just begun, as I say.
That also reminds me, in the recent light of the operations that were taken by Israel and the multi operations of warfare that were taken by Israel in multi domains, what do you think the role of cyber warfare has played in this? And what is the role of old school military tactics? And also, to add on to that, do we see the reordering of operational priorities now? Because now we have a cyber priority, now we and also have a military priority.
Yeah, but we cannot look at it isolated. We have a goal, and we are using all the tools that we have. It's cyber, it's a kinetic tool, non-kinetic tools, influence operation. We're doing whatever we can to achieve that goal. So when we use cyber, it's not, if you are attacked in the cyber domain, you are not limited to respond in the cyber domain. You can respond kinetically. And this is when you try to conduct a decisive victory, you need to optimize all the resources you have. So cyber is one of the resources. We need to cyber activity, cyber capabilities, and we need to optimize it and use it in conjunction and in synchronized to our kinetic activity and other activities, diplomatic, economic. We need to, when you are a state and you look at it strategically as a whole, so you want to use all your resources to get your goals, whatever your goals are. Influence operations, kinetic activity, cyber activity, economical activity, diplomacy, everything that you have, you need to use. And this is, and when you do it, you should do it in a synchronized way. So it's not antagonistic, it's more, let's say, synergetic. So this is the art of war, or the art of any activity, okay? This is the art, and the commander or the decision makers have to use all these resources for the benefit of the goals that they have set.
Well, then, extending on the idea of art of war and Shinzu's principle, what do you think now are the critical infrastructures, according to your research? Particularly, we look at the infrastructures of energy, water especially now, is something that is being targeted. What do you think is the changing infrastructural basis of cyber attacks, and most importantly, non-kinetic attacks?
Look, the advantage of using cyber attacks is a little bit something that it is you are sitting in a denial comfort zone. So something happens, let's say in Pakistan, it doesn't have to be India. Okay, if you are attacking some kind of cyber using cyber infrastructure, critical infrastructure are a wide span of infrastructure of any state that is needed. Water and electricity, of course, but there are more. There is transportation, there is the banking financial system, there is the health system. There are variety of sectors that you have to make sure that they are well prepared and well defended. I don't know the situation in India. At the time I was working in India, I did a huge I had a big work for the National Stock Exchange of India. And I was asked by, I can't remember who, if I could write something how India should build their cyber domain capabilities. So I wrote an article on that subject and I published it in India, where you have to make sure that you synchronize the whole national resources to get where you want in cyber and also not in cyber. And I think that article, maybe you want to, maybe I'll share it with you if you want to. If you write it, probably on Google you'll find it. Maybe you want to give it to your audience anyway. I think critical infrastructure is a part of it. You have to make sure to invest in that defense. It's normally the government does not directly defend those critical infrastructure, rather than they provide them with intelligence, with the guidance, with a framework that helps them, let's say the electrical sector, the electric sector, the energy sector, the health sector, to provide them with best practice defense. And I want to tell you, between all the sectors, all the various sectors, I've, from my experience, found that I'm an engineer, so I throw numbers. I like numbers. 80% of your defense capabilities are agnostic, are the same for all sectors. It's maybe water, transport, everything. And maybe 20% are just specific for sector specific. And you should build your capability, defense capability, based on this assumption. You have to invest in those 80% to make sure that the state infrastructure, critical infrastructure, is well defended, robust defended by 80%. And then the 20%, each sector will do their best to defend sectorized defense, whatever they need for, specialized with water, specialized with electricity, with health, and variety of sectors as well.
So focusing a bit on that, you just mentioned about the 80% that we need to focus on. What, according to you, are the doctoral pillars? Doctoral pillars in this particular sector, or in the research that we should do as a nation, or learn from Israel, for example, about not just cyber warfare, but warfare in general, that are unnecessary. Because if, for example, a nation like India, which has a technological depth and is increasing on a daily basis, what are the pillars that we need to keep in mind to establish?
Well, when I don't know if you use the word pillar, because when I wrote the article, I used the word pillars for India. Look, the main thing when you develop your, let's say, strategy, national strategy, is that you have to understand what you're facing. Okay, what are the threats you face, and you have to prioritize those threats, because you cannot defend everything. We in the military, we used to say, he who defends everything ends up defending nothing. You have to prioritize, and you have to make like a threat assessment. If we're talking about the India state, the India as a whole, you have to make a threat assessment and to define what are the threats you deal with, and to prioritize the threats, and to make sure that you understand which is more critical than the other. Now, for these threats, you have to generate what you call what you want to achieve. How do you want, not how, but what do you want to defend? And to again prioritize your defense priority. Okay, what you want to defend, and what you say, okay, for that I manage the risk in a different way. You have to do this kind of let's say conceptual assessment in the government level. Continue from that, there is another pillar that you have to come to say, okay, what is my response strategy? What do I want? How do I want to respond to these kind of threats? I need intelligence. I need response capability. I need to define levels of emergency. Who is defining the levels of emergency? Who is responsible for what in the state level? Again, if everybody is responsible for everything, the end result is that nobody is responsible for nothing. So you have to do this kind of assessment, and only then you can go to the how, which is what technology do you want to use, the technological pillar, what kind of human resources you need to develop, the human resource pillar, how do you train the human resource to respond and to use this technology that you have set. And of course, there are other pillars that, of course, you need to structure the response. You make the organizational, because the response is not one block. You have to prioritize, make let's say criteria for your response, And for each criteria for the response, maybe you need a sub-organization and to do what is the military responsible for, what other agencies, the security agencies, what are civilian agencies, what is the civilian sector responsible, because you want to use them as well. And even sometimes civilians, that we found, I did a research on Russia-Ukraine war, and civilians were used for, let's say, influence operations as part of the national effort, civilians. So you need to also make this big picture of who's responsible for what. And then in the end, the last pillar, that maybe one before last, is you have to train those guys and to make sure to make drills and to make sure that everything, let's say, this orchestra sings properly. Of course, when you try to develop your human resource, you have to see that all the national human resource capabilities are used. Academia is also used. Private institutions are used. You have to look at it as a holistic view, and then decide what you put effort, if the government needs to put direct effort for training of human resource, or maybe they can rely on academia or private sector training. And in the end, maybe this small pillar is, international cooperation between, let's say, India, in the case of India, between India and its allies, or let's say good friends, to make sure that if something is developed in one state, it can be shifted to India. And so India is always on the edge of, let's say, best available technology and best available practice.
That also reminds me, sir, when we think of autonomous decisions, we see a lot of false flags now because we have the extent of AI. And most importantly, the extent of AI has caused a sort of strategic environment where there is altering of lines. There's a blurring of reality between propaganda. There's blurring of what is real strategy and what is false flag that we are seeing on a daily basis. How do you think about this changing of AI's relation to it?
First of all, I want to tell you that when, in my experience, both in the government sector and in the private sector, industrial sector, financial sector, you see that defending your systems is mostly done by procedures of human activity, human. And if you want to invest in your defense, most of the money should go to the human factor, okay? Because humans are the most vulnerable side in cyberspace, but they are also the first line of defense in cyberspace. So you have to, and then the rest will go to technology. But humans are, let's say, investing in the human factor cannot be exaggerated. Now, with the entrance of AI, with the entrance of us not being able to understand who's who and what you are dealing with, are you dealing with a machine or are you dealing with a human? In the end, it's not that important. In the end, you have to deal with the consequences of what happens. It doesn't matter if it is done by a machine or by a human being. Make sure that you can, let's say, try to avoid a cyber event, a harmful cyber event, regardless who generated it. And of course, you can use your own AI systems to find anomalies and to use a variety of things. We are only in the beginning of understanding this AI revolution, only the very, very beginning. And we are yet to understand the full, let's say, the full impact of it. But let's say it, maybe in 50 years, we will be only machines talking to machines. Who knows?
Well, before that day comes in and Terminators march in at our homelands, I would like to ask you particularly that we don't have an international cyber law binding all countries together to certain guidelines. So in that, we see a lot of cyber aggression and a lot of cyber crime. Now, what do you think is the role of not just nation states, but individual actors who are working in the middle and normal civilians to understand and to be part of a framework that you were talking about, in which all groups are to be involved?
Look, you cannot expect, this is what we call a market failure. You cannot expect that this will happen by itself and that people will find their way, let's say, find their equilibrium and everything will be okay. The government has to play a role and to direct and to define the best way to use civilians or to use all the resources. It doesn't matter, not only civilians, all resources. And I think that one of the best way to do it is to follow the guidelines I just mentioned in my article, and then I did it now trying to remember what I wrote. In my article, it may be more detailed, but in principle, this is the case. And to direct, let's say, the population to be part of it. Look, when you are, let's say, working in a financial institution, and I don't know the common practice in India now, and you work with your company computer, and now on the same computer you open your Facebook or your Google account. This is a big hole, and you have someone has to okay. And on the other hand, to let understand the people that the people is, as I mentioned, is the most critical part, that they are the first line of defense, and nobody can do it. It will not happen by itself. The government has to invest in explaining, in education from a young age, and to develop their, let's say, the resilience capacity of let's say, the population and the state. In the end, it's of the whole country. So that's what I think.
So you live in and you have seen conflict firsthand, and you live in a zone full of conflicts. That is why I wanted to ask you that in the next decade, looking one eye into the future and one to the present, according to you, in the next decade is something that will rapidly be changing, and in national interest we have to keep in mind, particularly not just in cybersecurity but security in general, and the evolution of this hybrid warfare.
Yes. I'm asked this question a lot, and I always say the same answer. 9/11 US, the Twin Towers. Look what 19 people did with backpacks. They changed the world. Now, I don't see yet in the horizon that in a decade we'll see something like that in cyberspace. Something they might be happen. We will have incidents, and yes, but in the end, kinetic activity, bombs, kinetic terror, they will still be relevant for the foreseen horizon, in my view. And cyber has its place, but let's not be confused about the magnitude of the damage it can cause.
So also to remind my audiences that sir, you have served with the Israeli army, so that is why the IDF. That is why I wanted to ask you something in particular. You have been serving.
Not in cyber. I was
Yes, of course. That is why.
an
That's
infantry
like,
colonel. Yes.
yes. That is what makes it more interesting. You have been serving since the 1970s. So since the 70s till today, do you see not just shifting pattern in military, but what is the view of the military now on ground warfare? Has it been less conflict?
Let me tell you something. I wrote an article about a decade ago.
Yeah.
That if we had brought to any conflict area, I said in Israel, but let's say in India, Alexander the Great, we tell them, okay, this is the situation, please do whatever you can. He will not be confused. He would have known what needs to be done. Since the beginning of mankind, the principle of war did not change. We think they have been changed. We're trying on them, you know, a lot of noise and a lot of stupid arguments out there. But in the end, Hannibal, with the Punic War against Rome, used the same principles that we need to use now. And if we are not using those principles well, it means that we have forgotten the principles. The principles did not change. The tools have changed. Let's say the weapons have changed. Now it's tanks instead of elephants or whatever. We can fire, high trajectory fires. We can fire from space, missiles. You can use cyber. But in the end, the principles are the same, and we better off follow those principles and not confuse ourselves with, let's say, modern, popular thinking, think that we are now inventing something new. There is nothing new. We should go to Alexander, we should go to Hannibal, and even to Pharaoh in the, 3000, 3000 BC. So I think this is the way I look at the situation, and this is the way my experience. And it's not a change between the 70s and now we are in 2025. Nothing has changed 5,000 years ago to now. It's not so 1975 and now 50 years. It's not. It's a glimpse. No change.
So just a wrinkle in time. So
Yeah.
I would thank you so much for taking out the time. Before finishing, once you were talking about Alexander, it reminded me of a Indian poet, Shrikant Verma, who, while talking about Babur, said that a warrior Babur was looking for Samarkand and kept walking until he couldn't find Samarkand because he missed it halfway through and kept walking ahead. So I hope that we just do not keep walking ahead with technology and actually stop and look at what we have invented. So thank you so much for your time, sir. And
Thank you very much.
you.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning into the GeoStrata. And we will keep bringing such interviews which raises more questions rather than answers for our viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.